Hi everybody, I'm Andrew and I'm back once again with my 2017 Volkswagen Alltrack because I realized after the last video that I did that a lot of people don't actually know too much about these cars, probably because they're not super common in the US. But today we're going to fix that. We're going to take you for an in-depth walk around and point of view drive of this car. I just want to preface this video that this car is very dirty right now. I don't know how much it's going to come across on camera, but there's two reasons for that. Number one, I don't really care. And number two, it's been raining so much in the last 2 weeks that I haven't really had an opportunity to clean it. And in fact, I think it's supposed to rain again later today, so there's not really much point anyway. So the first thing we need to talk about is options, or as the European viewers would say, the spec of this car. VW offered the Alltrack in the US in 3 different trim levels, S, SE, and SEL. As you can tell by the upgraded 18-inch wheels, this is an SEL model. As you may also be able to see, it has the radar sensor down in the bottom of the grille there, which means that it has the optional driver assistance package. And one of the things that the driver assistance package included on the SEL models was these upgraded LED and HID adaptive headlights. Adaptive means that when you turn the steering wheel, they turn side to side. They're also fully automatic and have automatic high beams as well. These headlights also feature cornering lights, which is this little beam right here in the center that shoots directly sideways. Although it is important to note that those only activate at speeds below 20 miles an hour. And for some reason, they also don't work when you have the fog lights on. But anyway, speaking of sideways, let's move down the side of the car. And you can see that this car is finished in silk blue metallic, which in my opinion is the best color that VW offered on these cars. It's a very deep blue, although of course the lighting today doesn't do it any justice. But in the direct sunlight looks absolutely fantastic in my opinion. Again, you have the 18-inch alloy wheels that are standard on the SEL trim level. One of the ways that you can differentiate the Alltrack from the regular Golf Sport Wagon is this plastic body cladding and silver trim that you find all around the car. This car is actually 0.6 of an inch higher than a regular Golf Sport Wagon, although the off-roady effect is really more of an appearance than anything. Two other things you may notice on the side of this car are my roof bars, which are not factory, although they are a Volkswagen official accessory. I don't really use them for anything, I just like the way they look on the wagon. And the other thing is my super dark window tint. The sides and the rear are 5%, and actually the front windshield is 20% as well, although it looks a lot darker because it's a cloudy day today. Anyway, moving around the back of the car, you'll probably notice two things immediately back here. Number one, if you live in the US, is you'll notice that my taillights are Euro-style taillights. And that's not actually the lenses themselves, I just coated them to mimic the light pattern of the Euro-style taillights, which is why that they're still red. But regardless of where you're from, you'll also notice my giant exhaust tips. And once again, that's not factory. And that's because I did both a resonator delete and a muffler delete on this car. And since we're back here, why don't we take a listen to it? Also, while we're back here, let's talk about practicality, which is obviously one of the big benefits of a wagon. Getting into the trunk is fairly simple in this car. The Volkswagen badge also doubles as a trunk release, which is kind of cool. And on the underside of the tailgate here, you'll find a umbrella storage compartment, which is kind of neat, although it's not very big, so it's not actually very useful. But anyway, once you're inside the trunk here, you can see there is a copious amount of storage space. In fact, with the seats folded up like this, you have about double the amount of space that you do in a regular Golf hatchback. I think it's 31 cubic feet versus about 17 cubic feet. You can fold the rear seats down in a 60-40 split with these quick release handles on the side here. And with the seats folded down, you have 66 cubic feet of cargo space, which is actually not that far off from the amount of space that you get in Volkswagen's small crossover, the Tiguan. You also have a nice cargo cover back here, or as European viewers would say, a parcel shelf. And this car has the rubber floor mats in it, but underneath the rubber floor mats, you can see that there's a little latch here to open up this, which is more storage and your spare tire. And to close the tailgate, once again, you have nice handy handles under here. Despite the Alltrack's longer wagon body style giving you more cargo space, the wheelbase of this car is actually exactly the same as a regular Golf hatchback, meaning that you don't unfortunately get any more rear seat room. However, it's not that bad. I'm about 6 feet tall for scale, and you can see I still have 2 or 3 inches of legroom here. The only downsides are that I don't have a whole lot of room to move my feet around, and the seat is mounted quite low, so my legs are up in the air quite a bit. But overall, this is a nice place to be. You've got storage pockets on the back of both front seats. You've got 2 air conditioning vents here, although no separate temperature control. And for the most part, materials are pretty good. You've got a nice squishy armrest here, a nice felt-lined storage bin on the door, and the seats are nice and squishy too. And you have a little armrest, again nice and squishy, with 2 cup holders. Of course, the panoramic roof also helps the back seat of this car feel a lot more open and spacious than it normally would. So now let's go ahead and hop into the driver's seat. And stepping into the front seat of this car, you'll once again notice just how dark my tint is. Although it does look kind of green or yellow on camera, I'm not entirely sure why. It doesn't look like that in person. But anyway, let's start with what's right in front of us, which is this steering wheel, which is actually a surprisingly nice steering wheel. It's not the GTI steering wheel. It's the same steering wheel that you get in the regular Golf as well as most other VW models of this year. The Tiguan, the Jetta, the Arteon, etc. But it does have a flat bottom, which is kind of cool, and it has paddle shifters on the back. There are quite a few buttons on it, but they are all pretty simple to understand, and I'll go over the functionality of them in just a second. But one of the things that I love about Volkswagen, and really most German cars that I want to touch on, is the quality of all the switchgear, the stalks, all the buttons, everything. They all feel really nice to touch. Same thing over here with the door with the window switches. They're really clicky. All of the windows, by the way, are one touch up and down, which is nice. The light controls over here feel really nice, as do the lock and unlock buttons on the door. So with that said, let's talk about the buttons on the steering wheel. The buttons on the left are your cruise control buttons. This car does have radar guided cruise control, which I'll cover in the driving portion. So it does have this additional button here in the center. Below that are your volume controls up and down for your music. On the right side, you have your phone and voice control buttons, as well as next and last track, as well as the buttons to control the screen there in the center. Ignore the fact that the check engine light and whatnot is on right now. That's because the car's ignition is on, but the engine is not all the way on. So I'll walk you through this display here in the center. Unfortunately, in the Alltrack, it's not a color display. I'm not entirely sure why. The GTI has a color display, but this one is just black and white. But oh well. You have several different ways to move through here. You can either go left and right, which you can see you can cycle through your driving data or your driver assistance menu. If you're using the car's factory navigation, you would be able to see directions on there, or your audio. Of course, there's nothing connected right now, so it's just blank. Same thing with the phone controls, or your vehicle status, which is where if you had any error lights or warning messages, that's where they would tell you. And within some of these menus, you can also move up and down using the little arrows right here. So the driving data menu, you can see you have a speedometer. If you wanted to set a speed warning, you can see your oil temperature, your fuel economy, which you would be able to see if you were actually driving, your fuel economy since start, and actually this menu too, you can press OK and cycle through an additional menu within a menu within a menu. If you press OK, you can see that you can change it to your fuel economy for the extended period, which is basically since the trip odometer was reset, or since the last time you filled up with fuel. And then there's your fuel range, fuel usage, your travel time since start, since extended period, or since refuel once again, and same thing with distance, and your average speed. One thing I wish that VW had offered on this car was the addition of digital gauges. Even on the facelift cars, the 2018s and 2019s, you still did not have the option of a digital gauge cluster like you can have on some other Volkswagen models. But that said, of course, I have nothing against the old school analog gauges. They're nice and simple with the classic Volkswagen color scheme. Moving to the right, you'll find the Volkswagen MIB2 infotainment screen, which in this application is 6.5 inches and does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is nice. Although I do wish the screen was a bit bigger. In addition to the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, you have built-in navigation as well as Bluetooth and phone connectivity and voice control and all of the other convenience features that you would expect with a modern infotainment system. Something that I think is kind of neat about this infotainment system is this little black bar on the bottom here, which is not a styling element, it's actually a motion sensor. So you can see when I put my hand closer to it, buttons appear on the bottom of the screen, and then they'll go away after a second again so that you can have a larger screen view. Moving down the center stack, you have dual zone climate control, which is exclusive to the SEL model in this car. Everything again is very simple and easy to use despite there being quite a few buttons there. Just below that you have a storage compartment with a lid that has an Alltrack logo on it, which is kind of cool. And in there is also your USB port and your aux port for Apple CarPlay. And on the very bottom is of course your shifter. This car has the DSG dual clutch gearbox, so the shifter is the same as any other Mark 7 that has it, and also says DSG on the top there. Put the car in gear, you just go straight all the way down to drive, or in the middle for reverse or neutral. If you want to go into sport mode, you can flick it down once again, or push it to the right to go into manual mode. On the left side of the shifter is your engine start stop button, your drive mode selector, and your traction control off button, although you can't fully disable traction control in this car. You have 4 different drive modes, however. As you can see here, you have normal, sport, a configurable custom mode, and an off-road mode, which is exclusive to the Alltrack. Moving back up the center console, please excuse my water bottle and my sunglasses and the other crap I have in there. You have a 12-volt socket down here, and a nice squishy armrest once again, which is also sliding and can ratchet up and down if you want to lock it into a higher position, which is neat. Moving back up the other direction, you can see you have your sunroof controls here on the top, as well as your map lights and your other light controls. Something interesting about the Alltrack is that it actually does not have a sunglasses holder here like other Mark 7 models, and I believe that's due to the extra hardware needed for the sunroof. These 2 buttons right here control your sunshade, which, like the sunroof, is obviously fully power. However, this actual sunroof only opens to the centerpiece right here. It either tilts up or slides back. Anyway, on this side, you have a glove box, which is plenty full of napkins and your owner's manual and other stuff that's under there. I don't even know what's under there, but on the top of the glove box, you have a CD player, which is kind of an uncommon thing nowadays, and you have 2 SD card slots for the navigation system, as well as various coin holders and credit card holders. And like I talked about before, materials up front are excellent as well. Again, squishy armrest, soft touch materials on the doors, nice felt lined storage bins on the bottom. And something unique to the front seats in this car that the back does not have is this trim piece right here actually lights up at night when you have your headlights on. Probably can't see it in the daytime, but there is in fact a light strip under the bottom there. Last but certainly not least, we need to do a horn test. If you've watched any of my dash cam videos, that should be a very familiar sound. Since the clouds out there are getting increasingly darker and the chance of rain is getting nearer with every passing minute, how about we go for a drive quickly before the heavens open? And to do that, we're going to need to go point of view. And there we are, as if by magic, we are now point of view. So let's go ahead and close the door, put my seatbelt on, and like I said before, start stop button down here. And you can hear my exhaust there. Once again, all the way down into drive, and let's go. Straight off the bat here, I'm going to give you guys a little acceleration so you can hear said exhaust. Go into sport, manual, first gear on the paddles. I really hope that comes across well on camera, because it sounds so good in person. Anyway, so let's talk about driving. Visibility, as you can see with all the glass around me in this car, is very good. The one thing that this car does not have, unfortunately, is blind spot monitoring, which is kind of annoying, but if you adjust your mirrors properly, that's not really that big of a deal anyway. And I believe you can also buy aftermarket blind spot mirrors with a little wider angle piece on them if you want. So, how does this car drive? Well, if you've ever driven a Mark 7 Golf, you'll know that it's a very light and fairly well-balanced car, to be honest. Of course, it is still front-wheel drive biased. The Alltrack is all-wheel drive, but it is still front-wheel drive biased all-wheel drive. So, of course, it's not going to handle quite like a rear-wheel drive car, but, you know, when you do want to chuck it around a roundabout or a corner like this, there's no issues unless you're, you know, going to push it to its absolute limit on a racetrack or something like that. That's the only time you'll get understeer, really. And like I said in my last video on this car too, you're not going to be pushing it to the absolute limit on a day-to-day basis unless you're, you know, 16. So as far as around town driving goes, it's pretty quiet in here, minus the exhaust, obviously. Again, I don't know how well that's going to come across on camera, but road noise and tire noise are fairly limited in this car. The seats, of course, are perfectly comfortable for shorter usage, although I have mentioned before that they are not the most comfortable for longer distances. Of course, the SEL does come with the GTI style sport seats. Base and SE trims on this car get the regular Golf seats, which are a lot flatter on the bottom with less bolstering. And features-wise, this car is incredibly well equipped. Like I mentioned previously, it does have radar-guided cruise control, as well as lane keep assist, automatic headlights, automatic high beams, rain-sensing wipers, front and rear parking sensors. Backup camera, of course, is standard, although I do wish it had a 360 camera. But this car's party trick, well, I guess I'll call it more of a gimmick, really, because that's what it is the fact that it can park itself. So this button down here, if you can see, with the little P and steering wheel on it, is how you activate park assist. Push it again to change it to perpendicular parking. So now all you have to do is just drive forward until it recognizes a space that it can park in. It might be too far away from these cars here. Let's see. Yep, so there's a space, and it'll give me an arrow once it's ready to start parking. There we go. And all I have to do now is just put the car in reverse, auto steering active, as you can see, and just let my foot off the brake and let the car do the work. I just realized we're not actually parking in a space, we're parking in a handicapped loading zone, but oh well. Of course, because I was too far away from the cars there, it's not able to do it in one try. Sometimes it can and sometimes it can't. It's a little bit hit or miss. But there you go, it straightens up, and now we're going to go directly backwards again. Only thing I'm doing is just modulating the brake pedal right now. I'm not doing any steering or anything else. And there you go, park assist ended. Now, the annoying thing about park assist is that you do have to park next to something else. It doesn't actually read the lane lines, or the parking space lines, excuse me. You have to park next to something else because it does it based on the objects around you. Now, impressive parking technology aside, there are a few things that I wish this car did have. I touched on before that I wish it had blind spot monitoring, and I wish it had a 360-degree camera. Another thing that it's missing is memory settings for the seats. They do not have memory settings, which can be kind of annoying if other people drive your car on a regular basis. Something else that I wish it had was a power tailgate. And some of you that know me may know that I used to have a 2007 Passat wagon, and that thing had a power tailgate, which was kind of cool because That was not a super common thing at the time. But this car, being 10 years newer and having a starting price new of over $36,000, does not have a power tailgate for whatever reason. Give you guys one more acceleration here. Man, I really love the DSG farts, those little sort of cracking, popping sounds when you shift there. That's because of the dual clutch automatic gearbox, of course, shifting super quickly. And speaking of the DSG, actually, the transmission in this car is fantastic. It is super responsive, of course. It's the same 6-speed dual clutch that you get in a lot of other Volkswagen products, and it's great. The engine in this car, however, is different to the GTI or the Golf R. It's actually a smaller 1.8 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. It makes 170 horsepower and about 200 foot-pounds of torque, which is, you know, not a massive amount. This car is not fast by any means. I think 0 to 60 is about 7 seconds. But for day-to-day driving, it's perfectly adequate. It'll get out of its own way when it needs to. And since we're now back to where we started, I think that's a good point to wrap this video up. So back into park and engine off. If you have any questions about the Alltrack or other Mark 7 models, if there's anything that you wanted to know that I didn't go over in this video, leave a comment down below and I should be able to answer it. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up or consider subscribing, because I have plenty more content coming with this car and others.